All right, hey everyone. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make a similar version of this project right here. So I'm going to talk about the code that's needed for this project, my own personal recommendations that I learned along the way, how to solve some common errors, and I'm also going to modify it to suit different business requirements so you can see more specifically what we need to change to meet different requirements. And I think this way you'll get a better understanding of the code overall. So here is a quick demo of this hike tracker project. So if we click run, and here we're going to add some inputs. So let's say we want to do Mount Joe, state New York, miles 2.4, date completed. Just do, New Year's of 2024. And difficulty, let's say that it was a 3 out of 5. So we're going to click add, and it's going to say record added, and we're going to see that it's right here. And also, if we click here, it's going to populate these text boxes with the data from this record, from this row. And also, if you want to edit something, let's say we want to change 2.4 to 3, we can do that here. Click edit, and then it's going to say record edited, and you'll see that it's been changed to 3 here. Also, we're going to have this delete button here, which is going to delete this if we want. So select this, click delete. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Click yes, and it's gone. So this is me from the future recording after I finish the tutorial. So here is how the travel planner is going to look. And I'm going to do a quick demo for you here also. So we're just going to set destination. Let's do Montana. Let's do departure date on New Year's of 2024. Return date, February 1st, 2024. And budget, let's say 3,000 US dollars. So click add, record added, and see we have this extra ID column, which is what we want. It's going to be a modifier, not a modifier, it's going to be an identifier in the code, which you'll see. And it's going to be auto incremented. And so let's say we want to change the return date to March 1st. So 3/1. Let's click edit, and it's going to be edited. And then let's delete it. Perfect. So for this project, we're going to need to properly set up a MySQL database. We'll create an organized table within the database, and we'll create a Java program that connects to this table, allowing us to add, edit, and delete things from this table. So there are tutorials that are around 4 years old that are most relevant to a project like this. And after watching those tutorials and after plenty of trial and error figuring out how to do old things the new way, I'm creating a modern version of this project on my YouTube channel, and hopefully a lot of people can benefit from it. So the code for the hike tracker project as well as this travel planner project will be in the description of this YouTube video, and it'll be on my GitHub. So first, let's make a project in Eclipse called Java MySQL Travel Planner. So file, new Java project. We're going to do here we go. And I was taught to not include the module.java file, otherwise this project won't work. So delete this and click finish. So now in the src file, click new and then package, and let's call it travel planner. So right click new package and then travel. Finish. So now we need to download Window Builder from the Eclipse Marketplace for free, which basically lets us access Java Swing, which lets us create Java Graphical User Interface Applications, or GUIs for short. So we'll go to Help and then Eclipse Marketplace. And then here we can just type in this find bar here, Window Builder. And it looks like I already have it downloaded. So you will see one just for Window Builder, and just make sure it's installed. And then it might ask you to restart Eclipse so it can load properly. And we should be able to then right click on the package. So once we restarted Eclipse, we can right click on our package here with Window Builder installed, click New, and then we'll actually go to Other, and then we are going to scroll down to Window Builder here. We're going to go to Swing Designer, and then finally JFrame right here. We're going to click this, Next, and then we're going to name it Travel Planner. Click Finish. So the JFrame, and let's toggle this here to Design. So the JFrame is the main window of a Java Swing application, and it provides a frame or a window that can contain other Swing components like buttons, text fields, labels, and more. So the next step here is to get access to the MySQL database. So to do this, we need to download XAMPP. So we basically need to download XAMPP in order to set up a web server, which allows us to host web pages such as a MySQL database page where we can store data. So this is basically how we're going to create the MySQL database. So I'll put the link to download XAMPP in the description. I'm going to get there now. So the link should take you here, and since I'm on a Windows computer, not Linux or Mac, I am going to select this bottommost link here and just click download. And so once this is done for you, we're just going to open the XAMPP control panel, and it should look like this. And so we're just going to make sure that we click the start options for Apache and the start option for MySQL. I already clicked them, so it says stop. So click start, and then you're going to click the admin button here for MySQL. And this is going to open the website to manage the MySQL database. And it's going to look like this. So here we are, and now we're just going to click New up here to make a new database. And we are going to name this one Travel Planner. So this is the name of the database. And we're gonna make sure that it's Latin 1 Swedish CI, which is just generally fine for English content. So click Create. And now we're going to make the table called Travel Table. And we're going to give it 5 columns. Click Create. So row 1, we're going to make this ID, and we're going to make it of type integer. We're going to make it length 11. We're going to check this AI button here. This is for auto index, and this will make it auto increment. So it's going to be specific for each record that we add to the database. So every time we add something, the ID is just going to go up 1 in a value. So it's going to be specific for each record in our data table. This is important because in my first project, the hike planner one, or the hike tracker, I did not have an ID column. And if I were to enter 2 hikes with the same entries for every single category, and if I edited one of them on the chart, it would actually edit both of them, since my code didn't have a unique ID to specify which hike was which. So this is all set for this here, and now the next row is going to be destination, and we're going to make it varchar, and this is just the equivalent to a Java string, and we're going to give it a length of 255 characters. So the next one, we're going to make departure date, and it's the same thing, just varchar 255. Just since people will probably enter a different date syntax than what's expected, they have a date option here, but we're just going to keep it general here. And the next one, we're just going to do return date. Same thing. And then we are going to do this last one. We're going to make this a little trickier. And it's going to be budget, and we're going to do a space and then parentheses USD for United States dollar. And we are going to put double here. Double. so it can have decimals. So an important thing to note here is that if you try to put a length of characters for a double, it would give you an error. So in this case, only do a length for varchar and integer. So with this all set, we're just going to click save, make sure everything looks good, which it does. Save. And here we have our table. I also wanted to take this opportunity while I'm still recording to show us what the database for the hike tracker looks like. So I'm clicking hike tracker, and the name of the database is hike tracker. The name of the table is records. And if I click structure up here, we're going to see that here is the structure of the hike tracker table. And if you click browse, you can see what's already in the data table. So here we go. So now that we have our table, the next step is to download the MySQL connector, which allows MySQL to connect with our program, our Java program. Otherwise, when we try to get data from this MySQL database, we're going to get an error. So I'll put the download link to the MySQL connector also in the description. And when you click that link, it should actually take you here. And since I'm on a Windows computer, I'm just going to select platform independent. And I'm just going to select this zip option, this bottommost option. And I would click download. And once you download it, just navigate to where you downloaded it. You should see this zip file here. And what you're going to need to do is make sure that the zip file is extracted. So you just right click on it, and there should be an option saying extract all. So I already did this, so I don't need to do it again. Just extract it to the same location, and then it should give you a normal looking file like this. And what we're really looking for is this jar file. So I'll show you what we're going to do with this, and this is an important part here. So after we extracted it, so right click on your project. So this is the hike tracker, this is the first project, and this is the one we're working on now, the travel planner one. So I'm going to right click on this project, and I'm going to click properties. Then we're going to do Java build path. And then we're going to click libraries. And then we're going to click module path here. And then we're going to click add external JARs. And here we're just going to, we want this MySQL connector jar file here. And then we're going to click apply and then close. So here. So it's important that it shows up here. Apply and close. So this lets us engage MySQL connector so that we can connect our XAMPP MySQL with this specific Java project so they can communicate with each other. So first things first, we're going to need to make this content pane big. So to do that, you actually have to click on it and then click absolute layout. Click on that again. And now you should be able to move it out like this. All right, so now that we made it bigger, first we're going to make a new label with certain characteristics. So JLabel. And when you click on absolute layout and you click on this content pane again, it's going to allow you to add stuff to this thing. So very important to click absolute layout and click this. It's a one-time thing, and it lets you add things to it. And I'll probably be doing it again, so you'll see that again. So I'll click JLabel, click just here, and we're going to edit this. So instead of saying new label, we're just going to say travel and call it, let's see here. Make it travel planner. We're going to change the font. We're going to click these three buttons here. Make it 24. Make it bold. And click OK. And we're just going to make this a lot bigger here. There we go. So now we need to make a JPanel with a header. So let's do that. So JPanel. And because we did the absolute layout for this, now we can add this here. and we can make this bigger. So we'll do this, and in order to add the header, we're actually going to first go to border, and we're going to change the border type to titled border. And then now we're just going to name this planner. And so this is how you would do that. So click OK, and you should see planner up here. So now we're going to add J text fields and J labels. So to make the text boxes. So let's see, let's do a J text field first. So remember, in order to add stuff to this, we have to do the add stuff properly. See what happens here is like when I tried to add this J text field, it doesn't let me move it anywhere. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to do the absolute layout thing. Click on this, and now when I click J text field, you can add it wherever you want. So, but first let's do the label first. So I just right clicked, and let's do J label. And here we are going to change this text to destination. Make that a little bigger. And I am going to copy, and I did Control C, and then I just pressed Control V, and we're going to move this one down here. And we're going to rename this one to departure date. Here we are. Departure date. And now we're just going to Control C, Control V, and then we're just going to do it again. We're going to make this one named return date. Enter. And same thing, Control C, Control V. And we're going to make this last one here, and we're going to name it budget and US dollars. So here we go. Hit enter. So now that we have these labels, let's do the text fields. So let's do our first one. And we are just going to Control C and Control V, and we're going to add them and then Control V again, Control V once more. Here we are. And so now let's rename these text boxes. So click on the destination, the one that's going to be paired up here, and we are just going to right click it and do rename. And instead of text field, we're just going to do text destination. Same deal here, rename. I'm going to make it text dep date. This one. Text return date, ret date, and then this one, rename, make it text budget here. So we're only doing 4 here. I know we have 5 columns because we have the ID column, but we're not going to do one because the ID is auto incremented, and we don't want anyone to change that. It's going to be a unique value for every single entry in the table. So we're also going to add 3 buttons. We're going to add the add, the edit, and the delete button. So in order to do that, it's just going to be J button here. So let's do here. That's just a new button. We're going to Control C, Control V to add another one here. And then we're going to Control C, Control V, another one here. So click here, and I'm just going to change the text to add. And I'm also going to rename this button itself. So for the coding, I'm going to name it BTN add here, button add. And we're going to rename this one to button edit. And we're going to make sure it says edit here. And this one here, let's do the same thing for delete. So we're going to name it BTN delete. and it's optional what you name it. It's just so it's easier to see. If you want to do Control F when you're looking at the actual code for it, in the source, you can easily find that it's btn delete, because there'll be a lot of things that say add this or that, or like you have panel.add. But if you want to find the actual button, you can just Control F for button delete, and this will make it easier later, I think. So we're going to change this text to delete. And basically, yeah, if you double click on like a button, for example, it's going to take you to where that button is in your code, which is pretty nice. So it took you to the source tab here, and here is where the code is for the add button. So now we're going to add the JTable, and we need to make sure to add the scroll pane to the JTable. I'll show you what we mean. So let's find JTable. I think I saw it. It was here. So we're going to make this JTable. So this part's important here. So we have the table here, and in order to add the J scroll pane, which we need, we're going to actually right click table here in our components, and you're going to do surround with, and then this one right here, scroll pane. So when we run the project, this is important because the names of the columns are going to already show up. So we don't need to make text boxes here and do the names of the columns. If you surround it with the scroll pane like I just did, it's going to automatically have those names, and it's just going to be more organized. So it took me a while to figure this out. So now it's time to make the buttons do what they need to do. So in order to make these buttons do something, we're going to click here, and we're going to right click, and we are going to do this thing called add event handler, and we are going to add in action, and then it's going to be action performed, and we have to do this for each button. So notice when we do that, it's going to show up here in this add button code. So it added this part here, and basically we're just going to add the code for this add button within this action performed method here. So I'm just going to save this, Control S, and I'm just going to go back to design and do the same thing for the edit and delete buttons. So there, and let's do the other one. Make sure let's add some space here just so we know where the code is going to go. Design, delete, and just add event handler, action performed. All right. So basically for our add button, we are going to add two methods to this source code. So actually, if you just double click it, it'll take you right here. We're going to add two methods to our source code, and our add button is going to invoke these two methods. So we're going to make a method called add record, and this method will use the other method called table update that we're going to make. So add record is basically going to connect to the database. It's going to gather the user input from our text boxes here, whatever they put there, and it's going to add the information to the database. And then it's going to call the table update method, which is going to retrieve the newly added data from the database and display it in our program here when we run it. So let's make the add records method at the end of the code. So we're actually we'll call the method in the add button, but we're going to define the method here at the bottom. So we're going to put it here. So here I'm pasting what I made for the hike tracker project, and we're going to change it to fit our travel planner project. And I'll go over more specifically what this code does. And make a note that when I paste the code, there will appear to be errors. And this is because we just need to import a few things, and of course we need to change the names of the text boxes, which can be done easily. So for this method, it's this chunk of code here, and we need to put this section in a try catch block. So here's try and catch, which allows us to do some potential error handling. So the normal code will go within this try block, and if there's an error, we're going to define these exceptions, and hopefully they will catch them. But we shouldn't run into any exceptions. We first need to store the user's input from the text boxes into variables. So again, we don't have 5 text boxes because the ID is going to auto increment whenever we add something to the table. So we are going to make these string variables here. For example, this first one, we're going to change the name to destination because that's what our first text box is. And we're going to set this variable's value equal to text destination dot get text, which is going to retrieve the text from the text destination text box. And so remember, you can check the name of the text box by doing this. So if we go to design and then click here, and then actually it's just going to be here. So text destination. So this is the name of the text box that we're going to use for the coding. So, and then we'll just go back to the bottom where we were, and this is what I'm going to change it to. So string destination equals text destination dot get text. So we're just going to get the text that the user inputs for this text box. And I'm going to do the same with these other ones. So this next line here is just boilerplate code that you'll see over and over. It just allows our Java app to communicate with MySQL by loading this MySQL driver class. So, and then the next line, the next bit is also to help set up the connection, where we need to include a connection variable. And the JDBC bit is the JDBC URL, which just specifies the database connection details. And you need to substitute this hike tracker with the name of your database, which you can find in the MySQL admin page. So I'll show you here. So this is the admin page, and this is our database, the travel planner. So we are going to make sure, and so the reason why it's hike %20 tracker is because this space is defined as %20 for URL encoding. So we're going to go here and we're going to just delete this and do travel planner here. And the best practice is to avoid having spaces in database names just because it's easier. So root right here is just our default username to authenticate with the MySQL server. And this quotation, these double quotation marks here, is the password, which is just an empty string. And this is common for local development, but definitely in a production environment, you would want to make a more secure password than just an empty string. And here's an example. There's an error, and here we just need to import the connection java.sql. So this next line is to make a variable of type prepared statement, which allows us to define an SQL statement that can be executed many times with different parameters. So we then call the prepared statement method on the con1 variable. So this is actually supposed to be on the same line, but just because this is long. And we made this in the line above the con1 variable here. We defined it here. And this is going to let us make a prepared statement object. So the next bit is the SQL query itself. And this will be the syntax to add a new row of records to a table. And we need to make sure that the table is called travel table because that's the name of our table. So for a previous project, the name of the table is records, but it's travel table here. And I'll show you where you can find that. We named it here. So travel table is the name of the table. Travel planner is the name of the database. So here it is. So importantly, if there are spaces in the column names like departure date, we're going to put them in backticks. So there's no spaces in these, in the titles of these columns for the previous project, but let me add the ones from mine and I'll show you the difference. See, I'm putting them in backticks, departure, because it has a space. See this departure space date. So I surround it with backticks. And same for this return date and budget, because budget has a space as well. And then just Control S to save that. And the values, instead of 5 question marks, we're just going to have 4 because we have 4 of these parameters here. So just delete one of those. And it's important to note that these are backticks. They're not single quotation marks. So took me a while to figure that out too. I was getting an error and I thought that it was because I had the quotation marks, but you're supposed to have backticks instead. I could have made it easy and made the columns only one word. But I had this question myself: if a use case were to make more sense with, like 2 or more words for the names of the columns. And so, yeah, the backticks are how you do it to allow the system to recognize the spaces. And the question marks are just placeholders for the values that will be provided later. And it's important because by adding the question marks, it gives this query parameters so that it can help prevent SQL injection hacking, and it works perfectly with our code since there's 4 question marks and there are 4 things that need to be put into the database. So for this next line, this is something that's important to understand. Because the numbers come back from the MySQL table in the form of an array, and arrays start at 0 instead of 1, normally we would have the first row be insert dot set string and then 0 and then ID, because ID is the first thing. But since its ID is auto increment, we don't need it here, and we don't even have a text box to capture the user input for the ID. So instead we have 1 for, and we're going to change this to destination, and then 2 is going to be for departure date, etc. So I'll just change that here now. And another important thing to note here is that these are the names of the variables. So the variables here, not the names of the actual columns themselves for our database. And it's not the names of the text boxes either. Departure date. Turn date, and then budget. And we're just going to remove this because this is from the previous project. Just Control S here. And then the insert.execute update is going to execute this query to the database. And but now we need to get the data from the database. So the next step is we need to get the data from the database and show it in our table. So as we mentioned, we need that other method to do that, and it's going to be called table update. So that's table update is going to get the data that we put into the database, and it's going to get it from the database, and it's going to put it into our program. Then we're going to include this J option pane line to show us the message that the record has been added. It's like a success message. And then here, you might be wondering what's going on here. We are going to make it so that the text in each text box is blank after the record gets added to the database. So, once the user, puts in data for this and then they click the button, normally the numbers would still be in these boxes, but we want these boxes to be clear and fresh in case someone wants to add another thing right away. And then to finish the try catch block, we have to add the catch part here, which catches the exceptions that we're defining here. And we will create a print statement if there is an exception that matches. And we're just going to add these import statements. And first, we need to change these because these were from the previous project. So let's do that. So this is going to be the name of the text box, text destination rather. And then instead of state, it is dep date was the name of that text box. Ret date, and then budget. And okay. And here we go. And you might be wondering, what is this? What does request focus mean? First, let's change this back to destination. So basically, once you add them to the database, like once you add the things to the text boxes, you click the add button. It's going to clear these boxes, but then it's also going to make the cursor on this destination box. So the first thing you're going to want to add as a destination, just so it's neat. So just click save there. There we go. And here we're just going to click import JOption pane. And the reason there's an error here is because we haven't defined the table update method yet, which we will. We're going to import this and import this. And so there, those errors should all go away. All right, so now we're going to add the table update method. We're just going to add it right above this add record method here. So paste that from the previous project. So here's the table update method. And the first few lines, so we have the try catch block again. So these first few lines are just meant to establish the connection as we did in the add record method. But the third line is different from the add record method, because instead of an insert query, we have this query that selects all of the records from the table. And so this asterisk, this star, means that we're going to select everything, and we are going to store the result of the query in this insert variable here. And then we store that result into this result sets variable, and retrieve the metadata from that variable with the result sets metadata. Metadata equals the rs.get metadata. So then with this metadata, we get the amount of columns with the get column count method, and we store it in the column count variable right here. So we then need to make two vectors to properly store this information. So we need to make two vectors, and we're going to declare them as instance variables. So these vectors we're going to make are going to be part of the travel planner class, not just in this table update method, so that their scope extends beyond this table update method in case we need to access them in other methods besides this method in the future, but still within the travel planner class. So we're going to scroll up to the top, and we are just going to paste. We're going to put the vectors here from the previous project, and these work just the same for this project too. We don't need to change much. I'm just going to import vector. Here we go. So why are we using vectors instead of arrays? So vectors are great with swing components because they have dynamic size, which means that vectors in Java are dynamic arrays, so they can grow or shrink in size as needed. And it's useful when we're dealing with a variable number of columns or rows in a table. And also, swing components like the default table model, which we have at the bottom of this table update method here, they work well with vectors, and using vectors for column names and data makes it straightforward to integrate them into swing components. And vectors also have been part of the Java standard library for a long time, and they were always used in the past. And if you wanted to use the latest and the greatest, you could also use an array list, but vectors should still work perfectly fine. So if we go back to the vectors here, so we're wondering why this is vector object here. And basically the structure vector object is used to represent our table-like structure, where each row is a vector of objects and the entire data structure is a vector of rows. So the outer vector represents the entire data set, where each element of this vector is a row, or it's a vector of object. So the inner vector of object represents a single row of the table, and each element within it represents the data for a specific column. So using this vector with object allows flexibility in handling different data types within the same table. So each element in the inner vector can basically be of any type, like string, integer, double, etc. So if we go back to our table update method, so having said that, the next line is to clear this column names vector that we defined above, because we don't want the vector to be filled in with information from a previous addition to the record table. So once it's cleared, we need to make this for loop here, and we set the loop to go from 1 to the number of columns, because this column count variable is the variable that stores the number of columns. And basically for each column, we add the information from that particular column, and we put it into our column names vector. So we're then going to use this vector with the stored information at the bottom of this method here. And same with this data vector here. So, and similarly, we need to make sure that this data vector is cleared, which is why we have data.clear above this while loop here. So for this next part, we need to add the actual data from each row into this row vector here. So we have a while loop that repeats this bit of code as long as rs.next is true. And rs.next does two things. So this rs comes from here. And basically, rs.next does two things. It moves the cursor. So like, in the beginning, the cursor is positioned before the first row. And when you call rs.next, it moves the cursor to the next row if it exists. So when you call rs.next, it moves the cursor to the first row if it exists. And then on subsequent calls, it moves the cursor to the next row. And it also, rs.next returns a Boolean, either true or false. So it returns true if the cursor is now positioned on a valid row. So, if there's a next row, and it returns false if there are no more rows. So if the cursor is after the last row. So basically, this loop keeps going until the cursor would no longer be positioned on a valid row. So it's important to note here that we need to include the actual names of the columns from the database in these parentheses here, surrounded by quotation marks. And it took me some trial and error to figure this part out. And then we need to add this row vector to the data vector that we made above. So here, this is the row, and then here's our data vector, and we're going to change this to match our business needs in just a sec. And it's important also in this table update method, make sure if you have an ID column that you want to include it, even if it is auto incrementing. So you'll see when I update this here. And then finally, we have a default table model, which is created with the updated data vector and the column names vector. And the table, the JTable, is then set to display the updated model. So it's important that this table dot set model of this model, this table comes from our design. If I click on our table, so scroll pane, so see how this is called table. So this table needs to match up with this table here. So in Java Swing, basically, a default table model is an implementation of the table model interface provided by the Swing framework. And the table model interface is just used to define the data model for tables, and it allows you to interact with the data displayed in the JTable. So the default table model is not editable, and it's an implementation of the table model interface, and it holds the data for the table. And then here we're just doing the exception handling, the same one that we had for the add records method. So here, let's change this to our business needs here. So this is ID. This is destination. And these are, again, the actual column names in our database. Departure date. So yeah, just to reiterate, the actual names of these columns here, like ID, destination, departure date, etc., they go in here. And here we just need to import default table model. And here we need to import result set. And here we need to import result set metadata. There's actually, I have a note here that's make sure to import java.sql.resultset metadata instead of the com.mysql result set metadata for it to work. So let me see if there's a, so I'm going to go up to the top, and so we hit this plus, and so here we need to change this. We need to change this. Here we go. So this should resolve that back in the table update. And that took me a while to figure out also. So at this point, we also need to include this table update method. We just need to copy this and we need to call it right above where it's defined. And I'll tell you why we need to do this. So we're going to put it right here. And this makes it so the table is going to load whenever the program is run. To include the semicolon here. So if we didn't have this here, we would only see the contents of the table on our program once we did something to invoke this table update method. So like if we add something to the table and click the add button, because the add records method calls the table update method. But right when we run the program, we want this table update method to fire so it shows what's in the table. Otherwise, it would just be a blank table when you ran the program. Overall, just make sure that your parentheses are all correct for each method, and make sure you added the scroll pane that we did in the beginning to the JTable. Make sure that it is execute query here, right here, instead of execute update. So in table update here, we have execute query, whereas add record, we have execute update here. And yeah. And here we're just going to add another parentheses to complete the class body. All right, so now let's go to design and let's run. It says that column ID is not found. All right, so there was an error when we were trying to add the record. So I figured out what the errors were. So first of all, in this add record method, there was a missing comma after this return date here. So we're going to add that comma. The other errors, I forgot to update so in the table update, I forgot to change it from the past project, which the database was hike space tracker, and then we made the %20 for the space because that's how you're supposed to do it for URL. And we have to make this the database name for our current project, which is travel planner, and then we have to make the table travel table. So here, travel planner, and then here is travel table. And then the last thing is when we click the add button, we need to call our add record method, which of course calls the table update method. And we have to put that in the add button itself. So we have to do here. And with these changes, it should work perfectly fine. So now we will click run. And as you can see, it already loaded because when I was figuring out the error, I did some testing and I figured out the errors and I put this in and it worked for the first time. So you can see that because we have this table update method right here, yes, we define the table update method here, but we call it here. When we load the program, it'll automatically show the table that is already in the database as opposed to just a blank table. So here, let's add one and let's see if it works. So enter these in, click add, and awesome. So the ID auto incremented and it successfully was able to load those to the database and then bring it back with the table update method. So perfect. So now let's take a look at the edit and delete buttons. All right, so for the edit button, we need to do two things. So first, we need to make it so when we click on a row in our table, that the data appears in the text boxes here so that we can conveniently edit it. Then we need to be able to change these values and click the edit button and then make those records be saved to the database and then have the edited database records return to our table here. So let's start with the first part, which is making it so when we click on a row in here, that the data will appear in these text boxes so that we can edit them. So first, let's make sure that we have the right component selected. So I recommend going in here, and because if you click here, you're clicking the scroll pane, but you want to have the table selected. So click this, and then what we're going to need to do is right-click it We're going to click Add Event Handler, and this time we're going to select mouse and mouse clicked. So see what it did? It just took me to where that handler, the code is, where the code is in this source tab here. So we are going to put the code in within here, and I'm going to paste what I had for the previous project. So in the first line, we have to create a new instance of default table model, which clears the existing data and replaces it with the updated data from the data vector and the column names vector that we made. So this makes sure that the table reflects the most recent state of the data. It's basically just a common pattern for dynamically clearing and then updating table data in Swing applications. And the second line here just gets the index of the row from the updated table so that we can make sure we're focused on the right row. And then below this, we use a combination of that selected index and the index of the column to set the text into the correct text box. So for our new example, for our new project, we have to replace the text names with our names. And then we have to delete this last line here since we only have 4 boxes. It's important to note that we need to start at 1 instead of 0 because the our ID column, in this project there was no ID column, but in our new project there's an ID column. So since we don't want to populate our destination box with ID, we have to start at 1 since destination is the column after ID in the table. So let's do that. Destination, make this 1, 2, 3, 4. Delete this line. And budget here. All right, so now that this completed, let's make sure so that when we select a row, that it's going to show the data in the rows on our table. So if I click run, if I click here, see how when I click here, all the data populates here? So this is perfect, and that means that it's working. So now we need to start the second part, which is basically the edit button itself. So let's navigate to the edit button code. All right, so for the edit button, let's navigate to the edit button's code, and so here it is. So here we have this action perform method because we made the action event. So within this method here, I'm just going to paste what I had for my hike tracker project, and we're going to talk about it and see how we can make it for this project. So here is what I just pasted here. So basically, something to note first is that the add button calls our add records method. So right here. And basically what we did is we took the actual code from the add records method. So as we defined it down here at the bottom, and we just put the whole thing within our edit button here, and we tweaked some things. So again, here we're just getting the index of the selected row in the JTable, and it helps us identify which records to edit. So, and now within this try block right here, we are just getting the data from each text field. And the first line is used to get the specific row. So here for the hike tracker project, we're getting the data that's specific to name. And then down here we are just establishing the connection to the MySQL database using the JDBC. And the prepare statement right here is making an SQL update operation, which updates the records in the travel table, which we should change from here. The table for my hike project was called records, so let's make it travel table. And here, let's change hike tracker to travel planner, which is the name of our database. Save that, and of course, we'll change these up here. And also make sure to change, the name, state, miles, date, etc. To your specific database column names. So not the variable names, the actual column names here. So we'll change those as well. And then we want to make sure that the numbers here correspond to the parameters in our SQL query here. So see how name is first in the query? So that is why name is given number 1. So name is first here, and name is given 1 here, and we need to use the variable names here, and name is twice. So we have name here and name also here, because when we have name as 6, that means that 6 is the 6th question mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it says where name equals question mark. And the reason we have where name equals question mark is because we're using name to help specify which row we are looking at. So as we see here. So in our new case, we're going to use the ID column, which in my opinion is a lot better because it's auto-incremented and it's a way to, again, see which actual row we're looking at, because if 2 rows are completely identical, we'll know that, of course, the ID will be different. So if you try to edit one row, it won't edit another row that's the same because their IDs will be different. And we're going to have to change it from insert.setString 6 name to insert set int 6 and then ID, because ID is an integer. And it's probably not going to be 6, it's going to be 5 because we don't have this many columns. So then we'll change these up here. And we'll define ID up here in the try block as well. So first, perfect. So this is going to be the identifier right here. And we're going to switch it to where ID equals. And we have one too many of these because the hike tracker had 5 columns and we only have 4 here. So again, we need the backticks. And same here. And then same here for the budget. And this backtick here. Just got to change these here because I got to make the new variables, change them to our business case. Departure date, return date. And then here, budget. Get rid of this. Check these. Return date. And text budget. And then we need to do the actually we'll just get rid of this one and there we go. There we go. So now we just have to change them down here as well to match the variable names. Get rid of this, change this to 5, because again, it's the 5th question mark here. So the destination is 1 and it's the first question mark. All right. And then just this insert.execute update, this line executes the update operation on the database, so this SQL query. And then the table update here, we're just going to use this method to refresh the JTable with our updated data from the database. And then this J option pane is just going to show us the confirmation message to inform us or the user that the record has been successfully edited. And here we're just going to clear the text boxes after the record or after the table has been edited. So let's just change the names of these again from the hiking project's name to, we have text destination. And then we'll just change these ones too. Budget here. And then we'll get rid of this one. And then we need to request a focus again to make sure the cursor goes on the destination box, just so it's easier if you want to add a record right after. And we're just going to do text destination request focus. And then here we're just going to do the exception handling that we've been doing in the add record method. And now we should be in business. So let's test this edit button out and let's see how it works. So we already tested this part. So now let's edit this from 3.3 to 5.3, and then we're going to click edit. And we're going to see an error, and let's see what that is. So it looks like there's an error in the SQL syntax. Let's take a look. And the reason is because there's no comma needed here. That's why. So get rid of this comma. Then there's one more error because this budget right here, there should be a space there. So just click save, and then it should run perfectly. So run. Let's change this Alaska trip to return on March 1st instead of February 1st. And let's change the budget to $6,000. And then click edit. And notice how the return date was changed and the budget was changed. So this proved that this edit button works, which is excellent. So now let's take a look at the delete button. So double click there, and here is the code for the delete button. And I'm just going to paste what I had for the hike tracker project, and we're going to talk about this code. So here is what I just pasted. So basically we're keeping the first part of this code here like we do have for the edit code, but the first thing that we change are these lines right here. So this is just the identifier for the row, and of course we're going to change this to ID. And here, these lines here, is we basically give the user a prompt, and it basically prompts the user to select either yes or no, and if they select yes, then the program will proceed to the next part, which is the code basically just to delete the row. So here we're setting up the connection again, and we want to make sure we change the database name here to our new one. And here is the updated SQL statement. And it's going to be delete from records, except this is not the name of the table. The name of our table in our new project is travel table. And we're going to change this name to ID because this is going to be the new identifier. So we're going to do ID, and then we're going to do set int. We're going to change this up here to what we had in the edit button, which should actually be above it. So here was the identifier that we had for the edit. And we're just going to put that here instead. Save that. And now, so basically this execute update is just going to execute this query here, the delete from travel table. Make sure we have the right database name. And so yeah, if they select yes option, it's just going to go to this code here, and then it's going to delete it, and then it's going to call the table update method, which is going to just refresh the table with the updated situation. And now it's just going to show record deleted. And then here we're just going to, again, set the text boxes to contain nothing in them afterwards, because remember when we click on the row, it's going to populate the text boxes with stuff. This is just going to make sure that after we delete something, all those text boxes are going to be blank again. So let's just make sure destination turn date and budget. And so we don't need this difficulty anymore. And now we're just going to request a focus back to destination, which just means that once these things are deleted from the text boxes, the cursor is just going to go back to the destination box. And here we're just going to do the same exception handling that we've been doing in this catch block. And yeah, this should be the code for the delete button. So let's just verify that this works, that there's no errors with this delete button. So again, click here and let's delete this. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Yes. Record deleted and it's gone. Poof. So, all right, and let's just delete this other one too, just to prove that it still works. Awesome. And then we close this, and if we run it again, see, nothing is in this table anymore, which is perfect. So now that this program works perfectly, and since I'm putting the code for both of these projects on my GitHub, and the link to which is just going to be in the description, I also have a YouTube tutorial on how to download and also upload projects to and from GitHub. So I'll put a link to that tutorial in the description as well. And yeah, hope you were able to learn about Java and MySQL. Hopefully this will, also make it easier for you to do a project of your own with this updated tutorial. So thank you and have a nice day.